Absolutely massive developments in the saga that we are all following with bated breath. The one regarding Scottish 3rd Division side Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Now, if you are not caught up on the lore of the slow descent into madness of this club, let me tell you, it's crazier than like Game of Thrones if you read the actual books, okay? I first learned about what was happening at this club because this straight off Reddit type of LinkedIn lunatic, right? Spawned in and was attempting to buy the club because they were going into significantly challenging financial straits, right? Inverness was a team that has been in the top flight of Scotland. They are now in the 3rd division. That is usually a sign that something is going wrong, that the club is rotten. And they were definitely running out of money. And that's when this guy, one of the weirdest, most entertaining guys to research we've ever had on this channel. And he ended up not being able to buy the club because a local investor fronted the money to kind of get Inverness through the next couple of months. But what we have since learned is that that was not a permanent solution, that this local investor was not somebody that was looking to buy the club outright and save it from its serious financial issues. No, this was a local investor that was there to just kind of try to salve the wound. And this became apparent, right? Even though this local investor had beaten back this really strange dude that was attempting to buy the club, he hadn't managed to stave off the issues that Inverness Caledonian Thistle had been having. And they've actually gotten worse. And as a result, he's back. I mean that seriously. The guy that we sat here and researched for 10 minutes and discovered just so many ridiculous things and ridiculous reasons that he shouldn't be able to buy the club is now at least back at the negotiating table to try to buy over 50% of Inverness Caledonian Thistle again. But first, what happened? Alan Savage was the name of the person that actually managed to show up and front the money. Kind of a more local guy. He was able to show up and make sure that Inverness Caledonian Thistle didn't fold instantly. But his lifeline was described as a temporary financial lifeline. In a paragraph, this isn't a paragraph. This is a book. In a book that was tweeted out by Inverness. You remember when a tweet could only be 300 characters, by the way? I mean, what the hell is this? I read this entire thing. It was so incredibly long. I do love this part, though. Strenuous attempts had been made by the board to attract an inward investor, and we did seriously consider approach by from 77 Ventures, which they've misspelled, by the way. The way you actually are supposed to spell it is write out the word 70 and then put the number 7 right there at the end. So they've misspelled that to try and make it look more legitimate. From Ketan Makwana, on which there's been much public comment. Hi, I'm public. Although I'm far from the only person that's written or talked about the fact that Ketan Makwana is, in business terms, and certainly when it comes to spending millions of dollars to buy a club like this, a joke. Every person that's looked into it would come to the exact same conclusion, including, I'm assuming, Ketan Makwana, if he actually managed to look into himself here. But then important details on what actually happened is in number 2 here. Against the current perilous financial backdrop and to provide time for this financial analysis to take place in an orderly way, he, being Alan Savage, the guy that ended up taking over the club, offered a substantial financial lifeline to the club, affording it temporary solvency status to allow us to continue to trade. To that date, the support from Alan Savage has reached £350,000. So this dude forked over £350,000 just to keep the club afloat long enough for them to be able to run what they describe as what was it? Financial analysis to take place in an orderly way. Now, the conclusions from that financial analysis were nothing less than utterly devastating. Now, I just have to say, I am mind blown at just how bad at running a business so many people that own clubs are. I mean, you think about the overall total spend of a club like Inverness Caledonian Thistle, and it is less than $10 million a year. Significantly less than $10 million a year. If your total overall spend to run a club in the 2nd or even the 3rd division of Scotland, which is where Inverness is now. And yet the club took a loss of £1.2 million in last year alone. Right? I mean, that's the sort of train that is so large that when it's coming down the tracks, I have no idea how you miss that. And their predicted loss for this season is also $1.2 million pounds based on current projections. All this adds up, combined with some loans, to be a negative 3.8 million pounds by May 2025 against the balance sheet, which the club's kind of barreling out of control and doesn't have the money to be able to afford that at all. And it's been obviously teetering on insolvency for a long time. So what do they actually need to be able to fix this? Well, even though Alan Savage fronted £350,000, which is such an unbelievable amount of money to just fork over to try and save your local club, they are still projecting they will need in the region of 1.4 to 1.6 million pounds. That is to be required to get to the end of the season. That's not to save the club. That is not to clean the balance. That is literally to just limp the team to the end of the season. They need an injection of 1.4 to 1.6 million pounds, which again, how the hell do you get to a point where that is possible? How is that possible? People always make fun of people like owners like Daniel Levy that don't spend what they don't have, right? But the alternative in the other extreme direction is something that looks like this, where there's clearly a super tanker about to go sideways in the Suez Canal, and there is a toddler at the wheel. Like, nobody's paying attention here. Nobody's trying to actually figure out it's like the guy that he was doing the press conference when Leeds was getting launched down for financial tomfoolery, right? Well, we might, should we have spent all that money? Probably not, but we lived the dream. What was the dream? You got to hang out in the top flight of Scotland. I mean, I'm sure the fans in the club enjoyed that for a little while, but my good, you didn't have the money. So many problems could be solved if you just weren't spending money that you absolutely didn't have any ability to pay back. And now you have a club in the 3rd division of Scotland that needs just south of $2 million to get to the end of the season, not to solve its problems, but just to literally get to the end of the season. That figure, by the way, is assuming a second place finish in the league and excludes the $350,000 already paid into the club by Alan Savage. So it was like £2 million until Alan Savage paid it down by $350,000. Now, you cannot blame Alan Savage for stepping away at that point. He made sure the financial analysis was done. He kept the club alive at a certain, when it would have just died earlier. Now, there's a bunch of different stuff, like something like Battery Farm, which is this, I honestly don't even really understand it fully. It's some sort of development project that a couple of people on the board are involved with that's supposed to be able to help raise some money for Inverness, Caledonian Thistle. It's really down in the weeds type stuff in terms of trying to figure out how that's going to turn into money for Inverness right now. But in the short term, essentially, they decide to just hold an open meeting, open up an email. Literally, they give out the director's email, Panos Thomas at Inverness Caledonian Thistle, fc.co.uk. Right? They just post his email and they're like, if you have any innovative ideas for raising substantial funding, which I think is hilarious because, one, if I had any innovative ideas to raise $1.6 million, I feel like I would have done that by now. Right? Like if I had some innovative idea to make myself $1.6 million, why would I have not just done that to make myself $1.6 million? Now, I realize that maybe you have an idea where you can use the club to try and make that amount of money, but let's not kid ourselves. This is a club that is in the 3rd division of Scotland. This is a level of play that is barely professional in this game. You are not going to be able to leverage the reputation of the players, the reputation of the club in order to gain some massive, significant financial windfall through some clever thing that you're going to get in on your email. But it is, there's no clearer sign of how desperate the situation is than posting the director's email, just trawling for ideas. And the first point was that they set up a crowdfunding page, right? Because they need to raise £200,000 immediately by the 16th of October, or administration is inevitable. Now, there's a lot of other different pieces in this story, obviously. They've continued to hammer the GoFundMe. It's up to like £30,000. But to be honest, I feel like that money is going to go the exact same way that Alan Savage's money did, which is into a swirling vortex of a black hole. Like, at this point, what the fuck are we accomplishing? Right? Inverness has a passionate group of fans. Right? They have people to which the club is a very important part of their community and their social lives. And, it's just an important part of their lives. But those people who've been buying tickets and doing all the normal stuff that fans do to go to these matches anyways, probably aren't going to be able to put together 1.6 million pounds of spare fucking change. Okay. You're donating into this fund, which is great, right? You want to donate into the fund and you want to try and save the club. Even at the time of this recording, somebody anonymously donated 20,000 pounds. And maybe one of those assholes that just has more money than they even know what to do with can show up and immediately erase this club's debt and become a hero in the Highlands of Scotland. That is a possibility, right? You just have to appeal to somebody's charity, right? But people paying into this fund, it just feels, I don't want to say it feels dirty, but when a club gets to a point where it has nothing else that it can possibly do than post an email and say, hey, you have any fundraising ideas? Oh, by the way, here's a here's a crowdfunding site. Here's my GoFundMe, right? The club literally has a GoFundMe page, which if you want to donate to, freaking be my guest. If you've got some extra money earmarked for doing something good and you want to try and save the club, that's great. But it just, that this is the last ditch effort. This is the bottom of the barrel. And at this point, honestly, just go into administration and preferably do that before you have this conversation again, because P&J Sport wrote an article that Ketan Makwana is back in the Cali Thistle frame, which is, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not going to rehash all of the reasons that Ketan Makwana is not somebody that should ever own a serious football club unless he completely changes everything about the way he's done stuff in the past. Right? We're talking about somebody that owns 77 Ventures, which apparently has one employee. It's just him, right? We looked into all of this stuff already. He's been the CEO of various companies, all of which fold, all of which seem to just have like one or two employees, right? He is the type of guy you would expect to pop up on a low-tier podcast talking about the Sigma grind set secrets to success, right? He's that type of person. And yet, he has been encouraged, Alan Savage encouraged Ross Morrison, who's one of the other people on the board, to reintroduce Ketan Makwana to the process. And the board said they're now in the process of asking the lawyers for proof of funds, which if they actually do their due diligence here, they just won't find any. Right. And I would be really stunned if they did. I would be worried if they did. None of the whole thing makes sense. There's a lot of reporters that have chased this down too and written articles about none of Ketan Makwana's background really makes any sense when you look into it. The way he talks about the club and the club buying process publicly just makes, it makes everybody that reads it kind of uncomfortable. And it's almost like the scene from Inglourious Bastards where he's holding his fingers up like this when it should be like this, right? It's that scene. And it is a weird situation. And the only way you could possibly make it worse is bringing in Ketan Makwana. But the fact that they have returned to exploring the option with Ketan Makwana, they've opened up a GoFundMe and they're just trawling for ideas, shows that even though Alan Savage kept this club afloat for a little while, this club has been so horrifically mismanaged that it is headed straight to the Hall of Fame of most mismanaged clubs I have ever seen, right? Or not that I've ever seen, most mismanaged clubs that anybody's ever seen. I mean, you're sitting at the top of a third division team in Scotland, and you need $2 million to make it through a season without going into administration, not to solve the financial issues, but to just not go into administration. You need £2 million, right? I mean, that is psychotic, right? Whoever's doing, this is like giving a 14-year-old girl a credit card and unleashing her in the mall for a year and a half, right? Like, that is what just happened. Giving me an unlimited card on Steam and leaving me alone with a Steam library for like 5 years. Then I wouldn't be able to do this much damage. I seriously would not be able to do this much damage. Also, this on Makwana, I'm not going to be able to say it better than the P&J. A subsequent investigation from the Press and Journal into the potential investor's backstory saw Makwana, who had tried to get involved with several football clubs previously, described as a fantasist by those let down by him in the past. But Inverness really has nowhere else to turn, and anybody that throws money into this is likely throwing money into a black hole unless somebody is able to come in and actually erase all of this debt, right? But it is becoming increasingly dark and bleak and looking more and more difficult for Inverness to try and get its way out, and that has been amplified by the fact that Mr. Panos Thomas has resigned with immediate effect as the director. He's somebody that stepped in as an interim director, I think, in August. Right, he was part of Alan Savage showing up, and they were trying to change the direction of the club again. He said he stepped away for family reasons. Another member of the board also stepped away, and that would be Alan Monroe, who I don't know as a character in this story up to this point. But both of those guys have stepped away. And Thomas was literally just a retired orthopedic surgeon that was trying to lead this club back, even though they both said they stepped away for family reasons. And I hope their families are obviously okay. I don't know for sure, but the timing is obviously, at the very least, conspicuous in terms of, right, the situation's just getting more and more dire. It's getting worse and worse. I think they've completed the financial analysis and realized that it was even way worse than they thought. Clearly, for Alan Savage, throwing 350,000 pounds into this, he realized it was worse than he thought. And now everybody's just sitting there throwing their hands up because they legitimately are out of ideas, and the clock is just ticking down towards midnight. And there are increasingly fewer and fewer people that can actually stop this train. It's a sad situation. It's an incredibly sad situation. And as much as people make fun of sports in America, right, which I am one of them, and the fact that teams can move every once in a blue moon, and then that's horrible, and then all this other stuff, the teams don't fold either, right? This doesn't happen. This, in my opinion, is the worst crime in sport, to have a team that you follow and you're passionate about disappear. And if you're an Inverness Caledonian Thistle fan, you are watching your club die in slow motion, and there is very likely literally nothing you can do about it.